To this session titled Planning Your Career with the Possibility of Transformative AI Progress in Mind. AGI may be plausible within the next decade, and whether that transformation goes well depends on what people do now. This talk will cover our best guesses at the skills required in an era of rapid AI progress, how you can develop them, and why you should consider using your career to mitigate risks from AI. Our speaker today is Matt Beard. Matt is an advisor at 80,000 Hours, where he speaks one-on-one with talented, altruistic students and professionals to help them find high-impact careers. If you have questions for Matt, you can submit them via Swapcard during the talk. I'll be selecting a mix of your questions with some prepared ones during our Q&A. We'll also have office hours immediately following this session in Gather Round for continued discussion. Without further ado, Matt, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Nico. And thank you to everyone for being here today. Really excited to chat about what are some difficult, but I think really important questions to grapple with. As you might be seeing here on the slides, my talk is about how to navigate career transitions in an era of potentially transformative AI. This little tongue-in-cheek image itself was generated with AI with Banana, the new Google model, and is going to be all of you finding great jobs, even in a world that might be radically changing, or there's some possibility of that in the near future. But briefly, this is not me. This is Cicero, who said that good speeches, good oration starts with ethos, showcasing your personal integrity, your credibility, your shared values with the audience, to render the audience, well disposed and attentive, which is really my way of saying I am a career advisor at 80,000 Hours. I spend all day talking to people about their careers, how to have a fulfilling and sort of impactful career with the goals that they want to aspire to. Done this almost 400 times already in the about a year that I've been working here, and have really enjoyed this process. I also meet with hiring managers and fellowship managers at many of the organizations on our job board at 80,000 Hours, and I live in Washington, D.C., where I've gotten a sense of the policy world there. And so really try to get a sense of like, what are hiring managers looking for? How are these fields changing over time? Previously, I was a legislative staffer in Ottawa, in Canada, where I worked on some national security issues on the National Security Committee. Cybersecurity bill has some AI relevance. I did some animal welfare legislation, although this was more difficult than I expected. As many animal welfare advocates know, it can be an uphill battle, but really enjoyed that. And yeah, a long time EA nerd. I read Peter Singer years ago. I've also been following AI for a long time. One example is a year before ChatGPT was released. I was playing with GPT-3 in the playground, which, for people who know back then, you couldn't chat with it like a chatbot. You had to actually interact with this sort of like API environment thing. But I was a teaching assistant at the time, and I told my university, hey, we should really watch out for this stuff. We should really develop a policy on how we're going to use AI, how we're going to, deal with plagiarism. And I think I've been certainly following the space, and it's been kind of a wild time to watch the changes since then. Before I start, also some caveats. I think career advice is extremely context dependent. Really depends on where you are, and sometimes different people need to hear very different things. I joke sometimes that like a campfire needs a strong gust of air to grow stronger, but for a candle, it needs maybe quite the opposite. Maybe it needs to be put in the right context and moved. And so I will try to give general advice, but I really do think as much as possible, if you're able to speak one-on-one with someone about your career, maybe that's a trusted mentor, maybe that's peers, or one-on-one career advising. So 80,000 Hours, where I work, provides this service. Probably Good is another organization that does this. Animal advocacy careers, Consultants for Impact. You may have already seen some of these resources, but there really is a world of people out there trying to share resources, help you make decisions, help you find high impact careers. So would encourage one-on-one chats if you can. Another caveat is just I think while I really do think AI will be a huge deal and will continue to change the world, I think there are a lot of uncertainties regarding specific threats from AI, the pace of progress, and what strategies you should follow. We certainly have some ideas that we've written about on our website, and that I do have takes on this. But at a high level, I really just encourage you to read widely, and especially to take ownership of this question for yourself. This is potentially a huge factor in your career, and should be something you should continue to explore on your own. More on that, yeah, throughout the talk. So briefly here, I wanted to mention some of the sources that I'll be pulling from. How Not to Lose Your Job to AI is a Benjamin Todd article all about the skills that he thinks will be more valuable from 80,000 Hours of research. Our case for AGI by 2030 is our best version of the argument for why we think there really might continue to be rapid progress, and across what dimensions. And this piece, Now is the Time for Moonshots, by Luke Drago. I'm going to briefly touch on this at the end for if you are a person who's excited to have a high risk appetite, excited to be a founder, excited to maybe ride this transition a little more directly. I'll speak to that. But I do also want to say, like there's never been a better time to learn. For $20 a month, you can get like a pretty high-powered assistant to help you find other sources, help you red team your ideas, help you like consider things you hadn't already. So I really recommend people, actually use these tools directly. That's one of the themes I think of my career advice is now is a really good time to take agency over these own decisions for yourself and try to learn as much as you can. Um, and on that theme, Substack and Twitter, or I guess X, they have many problems. They are not perfect places, but I think there's so much advice out there now. There's so many people willing to share and discuss their ideas, like I'm mentioning here. So yeah, I would encourage you to read pretty widely and self-study. So putting AI aside, just to start, like what is my high-level view of how to have an impactful, fulfilling career, just overall? The first is I think you should identify a problem with a vast scale of harm that is neglected to solve, or excuse me, that is neglected at current margins, and that is tractable to solve. If you're familiar with effective altruism, I think this might be a theme of a lot of talks. This is a theme of a lot of writing on 80,000 Hours' website, but trying to be sensitive to the scope of a problem, trying to really see at the margin right now in the world where we need more resources and we need more people like you, and what problems are tractable to solve, that you can actually make a difference. Even within a cause, I think you should think, even within AI, what are interventions that would scale? What are interventions that currently work and things like that? But once you've done that, I think a lot of people I talk to, particularly people who are earlier in their career who are trying to make a change, I think a lot of people, their model is just like, get a job working on the problem. That's the next thing is they're like, go to the job board at 80,000 hours, apply to a job, work for a capital EA org, and like really, really, really try to make the job the central focus. I completely understand this impulse, like you want to work on these problems, you want to be at the forefront of these things, and like jobs are absolutely a way to do that. But I don't think this should be your goal. I don't think this should be your North Star, like the actual thing that you're working towards in general. I think your goal should be to obsessively improve at the rare and valuable skills to solve the problem that you care about. Fundamentally, you care that millions of people might be dying of preventable disease and you could help, or billions of animals are being tortured in factory farms, or there's nuclear war, there's the potential catastrophic risks from nuclear war, from future pandemics, and all of these AI safety threats. We really might be in a very different world. Because you care so much about these problems, my highest level advice is that you should care about developing the skills to solve them. And that can take many forms short of a full-time job. That can take many forms on the way up to a full-time job. And that like if you make that like growth mentality pretty central to your thinking, I think you will go a lot farther. I also mention here do so in a way that's legible for others to notice. Often my career advice is get good and be known. And be known is really central there. So I want you to do projects that people can see, work in public, meet as many people at conferences as you can, get mentorship and feedback, and I'll speak about that a bit more. Um, and yeah, leverage once you have that career capital, once you have that experience and skills and the rare and valuable things, you can find rare and valuable opportunities by leveraging that career capital. And I will have a thing later where you can get these slides, but I did write a longer post about this if you're interested. Um, with that in mind, okay, rapid AI progress might be possible. How do we reassess this model? How do we think about our career, based on that reality or that potential reality? I think one, your job is to reassess which problems, in a world of rapid AI progress, the harms might be different, the neglectedness, the tractability, these things might all change. And so for you, is it technical AI safety? Is it AI governance and policy? Do we need more robust biodefense in a world that has like really rapid progress? We've written a lot on our website about this, and I can speak more to it. But the problems that might be most pressing might change in that world if you buy that premise. And the second is, of course, the skills that required to solve these problems might be quite different in a world with more autonomous AI systems that can take actions for longer, that can like do very different skills than they used to be able to do. Even in the last few years, I've seen remarkable change in this. And so I'll go into more detail in the talk, but some examples might be you yourself using AI to solve problems, using AI to learn and to make things happen in the world, whether that's at your own org, like internal automations. 80,000 Hours has now been working internally to like develop some tools using these AI models, but also potentially working at an AI startup, potentially working in at the forefront of building those skills, especially if the AI is going to continue to improve in the future for your organization. Social skills, I think, are just tremendously important in this potential world. I'm in Washington D.C., where this is like particularly true for many jobs, but I think it's especially true these like intangible assets, these intangible qualities that are a lot harder for the current paradigm of AI models to compete with. Personal effectiveness by this, we really just mean like your rate of growth, you're getting things done, your some of the things I described earlier about these intangible growth qualities, leadership, communication, taste. Again, these I'll get into more detail later, or even complex physical skills that AI models for a long time I think might still struggle with. I'll be brief here about why I think AI progress is quite likely. I saw there were other talks on this today, but I do just want to briefly mention I think in so many of these conversations, people need a palate cleanser. They need to realize, 15 years ago, the world looked radically different in terms of AI. The things that feel so normal now are absolutely not normal, or at least compared to, when deep learning revolution started 15 years ago. And so on the left here, you see these like strange quasi hallucinations of potential dogs. Today, you can give an AI image generator like Nano Banana from Google is very good. You can give it this like cartoon drawing of how would a dog wear pants, and it can like virtually flawlessly output things like this. You may have seen this already. The old school, deep learning paradigm was, semantic associations between words were a really big deal. That wow, we can find out, tiger and lion are more associated together or something. Now I went the wrong example here, but now language models are getting like extremely high scores on tests of verbal reasoning and tests of PhD level, science, and winning math Olympiads. The strawberry here is the OpenAI model that won one of the world's best math competitions. Um, yeah, I'll be brief here, but we think there's a real chance artificial intelligence could be here soon and might not be, that transition might not go well by default. And I'll go through some of the threat models here, some of the things that really concern us at 80,000 hours as an organization, but you can definitely read more on our website at 80,000hours.org/AGI. Encourage you to do that both for careers and for thinking about these problems directly. Um, yeah, I won't spend too much time on this. I think digital workers, like if there was truly more and more autonomous drop-in remote AI systems that could do a wider range of tasks, this would be tremendously economically useful for growth. Epoch AI is an organization that has done some great forecasting of under various assumptions. What would this mean for the economy? What would this mean for economic growth? I encourage you to check that out. But even now, it looks like OpenAI, should the progress continue, should the paradigm change a little, could deploy millions of autonomous digital workers. And the salaries of current workers are just like, there'd be a ton of value in that. And so I suspect the hundreds of billions of dollars of data centers investments that we've seen already, if the technology continues to bear revenue, could continue. Benchmarks are getting saturated faster than ever before. If you haven't watched this progress in the last few years, it really is bewildering on multimodal reasoning, on visual reasoning, on almost every benchmark within the year. Even ones that are designed specifically to be difficult have been continually saturated. You might see this graph quite often from Meter. I recommend you check this out. It's sort of the time horizon of software engineering tasks that an AI system can complete, and you see this remarkable, models getting more and more capable over longer and longer time horizons on software engineering. And I think the labs are really pushing on this as one, potentially useful variable. And you see this across many benchmarks. Like there's a pretty strong trend here. I also mentioned, the capital investment we're seeing almost unlike any transition in the past, at least, rivaling the dot-com boom or the boom and bubble at the time. But I really think the revenue here is also quite staggering, and the forecasts are quite staggering. And so we're at a moment in history where we'll see what happens here. There's a lot of thoughts about AI job automation, and the one that I'm most concerned about personally is the automation of AI research itself. All of the labs, the frontier labs, have to varying degrees discussed this openly as a goal. Sam Altman, for example, has said by early 2028 they hope to have like a truly automated AI researcher internally. I think DeepMind and Anthropic have also really focused on software engineering to improve their own productivity. You've seen Google has a system called Alpha Evolve that they use to improve the performance of their own code for the next training run on their TPU chips. Right now, some of this is quite marginal, but as these systems get better at longer horizon tasks, as they get better at automation, I think this is like a very serious thing to be tracking in the world, and that even a small chance of this progress continuing could be transformative. There's many people on the internet talking about the taxonomies of how this might go poorly, but I think this one from Google DeepMind is quite good. We really want to make sure these systems are not misused. Some examples might be cybersecurity, offense-defense balance, biosecurity risks. There really are a history of biothreats and bioterrorism. If AI models enable bad actors, misuse could be tremendously harmful in the world. Structural risks, even if we assume that we can make these systems like relatively robust and safeguarded, what does this world look like where we have potential concentration of power in a small number of companies, or potentially geopolitical conflicts between different countries in the world as this technology gets better and better? I would love a ton of thoughtful people like you here at this conference to continue thinking about these problems and continue trying to work on how to make that transition go well. And of course, misalignment, which I've seen that there was a whole talk at this conference on misalignment and different approaches. But as AI systems are trained, it is a very hard technical challenge to make sure that they don't develop their own goals, that that they don't develop behavior that their creators did not intend. If you're well equipped to work on this directly, please do. That's my number one piece of career advice. I'll get into the more tactical things later about skills and about, how you can keep your job and succeed. And I do want you to succeed. But at a really high level, I think you should consider whether it be in policy or technical work or founding an org. There's a lot of investment right now and excitement about making this transition go well. If you are a person who really likes to get things done in the world, whether that be in management or comms or ops or being a chief of staff, if you have experience to leverage here, I really do encourage you to consider applying to some jobs on our job board and reading more about these problems, because I think these skills are often in demand. Yeah, there's quite a list here of cybersecurity skills, software engineering skills. Where I work in Washington, D.C., there's quite a few like think tanks doing great work on this. Congressional staffers can always do great work, on a range of these problems. There's so many different ways you might apply your skill set. Even helping others get into this field, even doing like epoch style data analysis of trends in this industry. So I encourage you to check that out. Going to move on from why you should care about this problem, but take a minute here if you'd like to get a link to these slides where I have some further resources of our website, Center for AI Safety's website, different scenarios here that people have written about. I'll give you one more second here. Great. All right. I can hear you saying though, like, all right, but like, how do I make sure I don't get automated? How do I make sure I still fit into this world where skills are changing so rapidly? I love this genre, by the way, of terrible business stock images, and I think most of them are AI now. Yeah, so a thesis on our site certainly is that the skills that AI automates will decrease in value, but that the remaining bottlenecks, especially if this leads to more economic growth, the remaining bottlenecks will become more valuable. The skills that AI can't do. We have an example of ATMs when they were first introduced. The number of bank clerks over time, and you can see on our website, actually didn't decrease. It didn't decrease dramatically at all. It increased because ATMs made it much easier to have banks, and so banks could open many more branches. These are obviously complex economics-y questions, but I think this is like instructive of the fact that there was a lot of demand for people to have bank branches near them, and so ATMs actually increased the overall demand and productivity, or the ability to meet that demand. But then online banking, I think there's pretty strong evidence to see that in the past few years has decreased the number of new branches and even decreased the number of bank clerks overall. Online banking is a different kind of automation than just ATMs. And so like even myself, I go to a bank branch maybe once a year or something, right? And so the nature of automation can change. And I think you should picture this riding this wave of productivity on the way up as we get like this more enhancing automation, but full automation, I think, would radically change many sectors. And so what I think you should focus on really are skills that are hard for AI, that are potentially needed for deploying AI. And you should think of that quite broadly, even in your own organizations, even in your own work. As I mentioned, 80,000 Hours has hired someone to help us, utilize these tools ourselves. Yeah, as the world potentially gets richer, as there's potentially more demand for services and goods, skills that are used to make things that the world could use far more of, that you think the demand will continue, could be quite useful. And skills that are hard for others to learn. So this is again that rare and valuable skill rare and valuable traits that I was sort of speaking about earlier. Getting a bit more specific from the article on our website, using AI to solve real problems. If you have this view that like AI systems will take more actions in the world, will be able to operate over longer time horizons, there's just going to be a bunch of ways that this has to be like integrated into the economy, and that different organizations are going to try and work on this. And I still think it's quite early. You still really can be one of the people who gets a sense of how to use these tools, and how to even personally use them to learn and to work on new projects and to like scale up faster than you might have otherwise in the past. Also to learn the limitations of these tools, right? I'm not saying that they're flawless or that they, don't make mistakes, but understanding their brittleness, understanding what they can be used for and how they change over time, that can also be like extremely valuable. And a lot of this thesis is contingent on the assumption that like I think they will continue to be. So yeah, Benjamin Todd in this article also says if you could work at an AI application startup for a couple of years to get experience on this, that could be another way. But I think there's a lot of potential ways to do this. I mentioned this earlier, but I think personal effectiveness is really underrated, and social skills are just like such a huge part of this anyways. Even putting aside AI, I think being someone that is like trustworthy, builds relationships that like people really want to work with, and that You can, I think this is like a perennially underrated skill. But other personal effectiveness things that are just intangible are like, rapidly learning. The world might be changing quite fast if we do get some of these AI outcomes. And so building the skills to be someone who's effective, who can like be adaptable, this can certainly help. And so I would encourage you to work with people like this and try and learn as much as you can from books and other sources like that. Biographies are sometimes really motivating for me, for example. Leadership, I think, will always be a bottleneck, or will very likely be a bottleneck all the way up into this transformation. So even if it's you managing potentially a fleet of AI tools or managing more people than you otherwise might have, I think this will still be a bottleneck. And so I would, focus on these messy and tangible leadership skills like taste and strategy and managing a range of people. Sometimes even good prompting for AI models is quite similar to being a good manager. Um, yeah, communications and taste. Taste is even more intangible than some of the other things I've been describing, but discernment, trusting relationships with the people you work with and the audiences you serve, I think will become more valuable. There'll be a flood of content, there already is, a flood of things in the world, but like personality-driven, personal taste will be important. Benjamin Todd writes here about getting things done in government. I think like this is especially true in Washington, D.C., where I am, but also at the state level or at many other places, parts of government. I think people want real decision makers to be human beings to be working here, and often the government will be a bit slower to implement some of these technologies. I don't think that's necessarily true in all cases, but might be true that if you're someone who can like get really good at understanding how to make shape these decisions and stuff, that might be impactful and might be just impactful anyways for many of the causes that you care about. Lastly, of course, is like complex physical skills, and so like robotics, I think will certainly lag behind some of the innovations we've seen in AI. It's hard to know by how much, but you could potentially work on some of these like emerging industries and try to build on those complex physical skills in the world. Although I would say some rote things like driving cars, for example, obviously were automated faster than some might have expected, even though that's a complex skill that exists in the physical world. I mentioned earlier that Twitter is helpful. This is something I just quickly saw before this talk, but I think is a great example. This person, Chris Barber, asked a bunch of people in the AI industry, how can someone take advantage of AI opportunities? And here's a few of the answers. Tyler Cowen's an economist. He said, your personal reputation, your name, who knows you, who can vouch for you, these are really the things to invest in a world where maybe like particular tasks and skills might be changing. And I think this is just such good advice in general. It's a cliche that I keep sharing with people, that your network and your relationships matter so much. But I think it fundamentally is how you get these great jobs and opportunities. Richard No, who works at OpenAI, said, being agentic, getting things done, building really high trust relationships, and not even necessarily by like directly networking, schmoozing with people, but just like fundamentally following your interests and finding other people who are like doing similar things or who could speak about their papers, speak about their work, going to conferences. Like, I think so much of networking should be more of like a genuine research project or something that you just deeply care about. Jeremy Howard said, if you're at university, in particular doing many other side things outside of your classes, having side hustle, side interests, I think this fits with the theme of like adaptability in a world of potential AI progress. And I loved this phrase. I guess this next speaker said, invest in the positional goods of career capital. So networks, relationships, reputation, positional to others while this whole world might potentially be changing. So yeah, be known, trusted relationships, and do interesting things. The skills I'd like you to be doing, spending less time investing in, ideally, might be things like coding, applied math, STEM, things that are like, especially the rote side of this. So maybe like strategic decisions about big code bases still matter or something, but like, as much like staying away from as much of the rote tasks as possible would be good. If your job is just like a bunch of recall and application of established knowledge, routine writing and translation and things like that, I would certainly want you to like diversify your skill set. Even visual creation, I think, fell to the AI a lot faster than many people expected. And so, routine, more of the routine physical skills might as well. And all this is from Benjamin Todd's article that I think is really quite good. Hard to say the effect overall, but I do think these are important things to keep in mind. Goofy thumbnails here, and we should have skepticism of the frontier AI CEOs. They do need to invest, and get a lot of investment there. But I really do think that this theme of leveraging AI is so important. If we have a country of geniuses in a data center that could work on projects like yours, I think that's particularly important. And so like a small team can maybe get more done now than ever. And I've already seen this even in some nonprofits and in the broader space. really briefly here, just more generic career advice that I think still holds here, and I think it's still really important. This ladder of cheap tests. So it's fine if your career looks like this for quite a while, if you're testing things out, if you're like empirically seeing what you're good at. I think that's like very important. And it's just where you will most excel. You should try side projects. You should meet with people. You should like empirically test your skills and your direction of your growth. And on that theme, I think deliberate practice is just so important. It's so underrated to work at this combination of strain, where you're still learning, but also getting feedback and tight feedback loops. And I think there are many ways to do that. What is your version of practicing your piano scales, right? You should actually identify the skills. So I have some thoughts here, but really you should go talk to people in your industry. What are the ways you can learn from experts about what skills are most important? Maybe it's even looking at job postings and trying to work backwards, or doing some side projects that I mentioned. And yeah, model yourself on world-class performers. So like really you should download some templates in your head of like what a great performer in your field might look like. And yeah, tighten your feedback loops. It's can't be said enough to learn from others as much as possible, even if it's working in public online or something. Yeah, I briefly want to mention this piece by Luke Drago. I think if you're particularly a person with a high risk tolerance, someone with a personal fit for like not needing a manager per se, but being much more willing to like carve out your own path and set your own direction, I think this piece might be good for you. I do want to caveat that I don't think this is great advice for everyone. Many people do need outside structure and mentorship. Many people don't feel comfortable when they have a more high risk scenario for their career. So keep that in mind. But this thesis is really it shakes your complacency that if we might be in a world of radical AI progress, now is the time to take bigger risks. Don't go work at Deloitte for 3 years as a consultant making slide decks. If we might be seeing a radically different world where not only are those skills less relevant, but maybe the entire world is changing around you, and there are probably problems that you'd be so excited to work on directly if you could. Execution is probably going to get cheaper. Making things happen in the world. Imagine you had 50 interns working for you. That's kind of the paradigm we're in now, where they're imperfect AI interns and they can't work for very long horizons on tasks. But if you did have this workforce of like execution, what would you want to do in the world, and what are the problems you actually think you could work on most directly? Founders, I think, are sometimes underrated within AI safety or within the broader EA movement. I think it's so important, the people who get projects off the ground and make things happen. And so you could potentially apply for funding or even start like there's venture capital funding. Coefficient Giving has requests for proposals for some of these problems. So I would encourage you to consider that. And start now, like don't wait for permission to work on these problems. So yeah, thank you so much. I see I'm close to time here, but I'd love to take this into the office hours if people have questions. And yeah, if you want these slides, you can get a link to them here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for that wonderful presentation. I'm feeling ready to take some moonshots. I don't know about everybody else, but yeah, I appreciate that. Let's see. I think we have time for maybe a handful of questions if people want to put those in the chat. Again, yeah, we'll have office hours after this in Gather Round, and you can join those as well. I'll start with one just to get us started. You mentioned that building careers is a key way to building relationships is a key way to further your career. But maybe for someone who's starting out who doesn't have an established network yet, like a student or someone pivoting careers, it can kind of be hard to build that. So do you have any ways to, recommendations for people to build meaningful relationships while kind of avoiding that superficial networking?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, congrats, you're already here. Like an event like this, you see who's on the list, see if they're interesting people who share the types of projects that you're potentially interested in. Many of them might not have time to respond, but I really encourage you to do cold outreach. The head of RAND, which is a big think tank in DC, Jason Matheny, he's talked about how he really jump-started his career by just cold emailing an academic whose book he loved, and they started talking. And this is like one example, but I think is really worth your time to try. And conferences in general can be a way to do this. I think even finding like second authors on papers and sending a short email can help. Attending events in person can help. Many cities have EA communities or AI in-person events you can attend, talks, lectures, and things like that. But if you treat this more like a research project, more like I genuinely want to learn about the world and that like other people are out there have knowledge and might be willing to share, I think that can break down the like artificiality of networking. Like I don't want you to be just like thinking of yourself as pitching yourself and having to like hustle and do this elevator pitch and whatever. No, it's like what problems do you actually care about, and like what are the things that are on your mind that you want to learn. And if you do have a side project, that can be another way to do this, to say like, hey, I'm writing this thing, I have 2 pages in a Google Doc, like do you have 5 minutes to review this or something. And so then you're like you're learning in a more active way. But I will say 80,000 Hours recently put out a networking guide on our website as well, so encourage you to read more details there.
Sweet. Thanks, Matt. I know we're getting close to time, so I will wrap us up here. I know there were a couple of questions in the chat. If you are keen to get those answered, please join us and gather around shortly. But otherwise, thanks, Matt. Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.